All right. Welcome to AstroTalk and Tea. My name is Kelsey. Thanks for being here. Today we're going to be talking about Gemini season 2021, which will run from May 20th until June 20th. So to start, we always talk about characteristics of the sign. And when I think of the sign of Gemini, the first things that come to mind are Gemini energy is extremely charming. It's very sociable. They tend to be very witty. It's a very intellectual energy, very curious. Gemini energy is also incredibly communicative. Now, the communication can happen in a lot of different mediums, but kind of this idea of gathering facts and data and information and then being able to share ideas and information and data, the whole process of that is really kind of the hallmark of Gemini energy. And so typically Gemini energy is very mentally curious, loves to be mentally stimulated, hates to be bored. And Gemini energy really can process things so quickly from a mental perspective. Additionally, Gemini energy typically is very open-minded and very open to different perspectives and seeing perspectives outside of their own. Because I think Gemini energy is really good at understanding how, if you have access to this data and these facts and this type of information, you're going to come to one conclusion. But when new information or facts or data are introduced, then you might change your mind and come to a different type of conclusion. So that's where I think also Gemini gets its characteristic versatility from. It's a very go with the flow type of energy. I always think of Gemini energy as very exploratory, definitely mentally speaking. And then I kind of think of it as a very unbound energy as well. Like Gemini energy is not necessarily into like strictness and rules and structure and boundaries. I think of the energy as much more changeable, much more permeable. And it really feels similar to Pisces energy to me in that way in particular. Additionally, Gemini energy, I feel like, is very characteristic of someone who doesn't need a lot of preparation for things. The Gemini is not the person that is, reviewing their script 20 times and trying to memorize every little word before they go into an audition or an interview or something along those lines. Like, Gemini energy is much more fly by the seat of their pants. It's much more like showing up and in any given situation being fully present and open and receptive to just whatever is in front of them. And for that reason, Gemini energy is often really adept at just responding to whatever is going on or whatever is happening in the moment. I think that is just a wonderful quality that I personally don't have, that I admire very much about Gemini energy. It's that energy of being ready to respond to any given outcome in any situation because they're just so engaged and so present in the moment. Now, when we think about energy being out of balance, which we know every sign's energy can be out of balance in different ways, the first thing that would be kind of a telltale sign of that for Gemini would be scattered. So sometimes Gemini energy spreads itself a little too thin, has their hands in too many different projects going on all at the same time, and that can lead to a sense of burnout or a sense of just not being able to perform at their best level in any one arena because there's just way too much going on. Secondarily, when Gemini energy is out of balance, anxiety is a big thing to watch out for because it is such a mental, intellectual sign, and they are always processing so much information through their mind at any given moment. And when they don't have enough rest, when they don't have enough downtime, when they can't switch from left brain into right brain for a time, that can often lead to a lot of anxiety building up. The third hallmark, I think, of Gemini energy being out of balance is unable to use information either purposefully or appropriately. So a couple examples of that would be number one, being really gossipy, because gossip is a form of information, and Gemini loves information in any which way, any which form. So that might be something like, sharing information about other people that you're not really supposed to be sharing. That could be an example of not using information appropriately or responsibly. A second example could be something more like Gemini just getting so inundated by everything they read, and then they hear stuff on the news and on the radio, and then they talk to people, and it's just, there's so much input of information, especially now in the age of technology, that like Gemini energy can have a hard time distinguishing between what information is essential, important, useful, and what information is like trivial and non-essential and doesn't really matter. And so when they have a hard time kind of discerning between those two things, it can just mean that they're, sometimes they can be a little bit ineffective or inefficient in whatever it is that they're doing, okay? So those are some examples of Gemini energy in balance and shining, and then Gemini energy a little bit out of balance as well. But we're all going to be swimming in Gemini energy from May 20th to June 20th. So that being said, what can we all be working on at this time? Well, the first thing I would say is get your facts straight. Not only because it's Gemini season, but because Mercury is going to be retrograde during Gemini season, and it's retrograde in the sign of Gemini too. So we're like really doubling down on this Gemini energy. And you know, when Mercury is retrograde, it's a really great time to revisit things. And I think especially connected to information. So whatever you read, whatever you heard, whatever you've discussed and talked about, you know, I would revisit that and just see, you know, is there new information? Is there new data? Did you miss anything in your initial research? Whether it was connected to work or something in your private life or whatever it may be, it's a really good time to go back and take a look at the facts and just make sure that you have everything straight, or as straight as it can be at this point in time anyway. The second thing we can all do during Gemini season is socialize. It's definitely a time for getting out, connecting with people, the exchange of ideas and information. And so obviously everybody socializes in a different way. So whatever calls to you, it's just a good time to be in purposeful connection with others. The third thing we can do during the season is allow ourselves to have shiny object syndrome, which typically I might think of this in a less than positive way, but you know, I think of shiny object syndrome as someone who like can't focus and complete one particular thing because they're like, oh my gosh, look at that. Oh, what's that? Oh, what's that over there? You know, just like someone who's very captivated by all kinds of new stimuli from the outside. And I do think though Gemini season is the best time to have that attitude in life throughout the whole year. So allow yourself to explore, allow yourself to, or just notice what captures your attention. Notice what captivates you. Notice what you find really interesting and you're curious about and you want to explore. Like Gemini season is not one where we have to worry about like, we have to commit to this course of action and we can't deviate because this is what we said we were going to do. You know, no, now's the time to be versatile, changeable, go with the flow. So just allow yourself to explore anything that excites or interests you during the season, even if it doesn't come to anything, you know, at the end of Gemini season, that's okay. And then lastly, setting long range intentions. So we have two eclipses, both a lunar and a solar eclipse that are occurring during Gemini season. And so this is a really good time to think about long range intentions for the next 6 months, 12 months, I mean, even the next 18 years. So the next time we'll have eclipses in the sign of Gemini, etc. So really thinking about and being purposeful about what some of your long range intentions might be. It's a good thing to focus on during this next month. When we think about healing modalities for Gemini season, I always start with herbs. My top two for Gemini season are always lemon balm and passion flower because they help us to calm down. They help us to come out of the spinning runaway train mind and to get back into our bodies, which is really great. And then the third herb I'm going to recommend for this season are stinging nettles. You can get that as a tea, you can get it as an herbal tincture. Oftentimes it's in a lot of different herbal formulas as well. Stinging nettles can be great for allergies and asthma, which tend to be prevalent during Gemini season, but also Gemini is connected to the lungs and different conditions with the lungs, so just kind of all ties in together there. When we think about crystals or stones for this season. The first one that I recommend is blue lace agate. The reason being, it helps to reduce anxiety, it helps us to sleep better, and then it also helps like with throat issues and communication stuff, which definitely ties very well into Gemini season. So blue lace agate is one, purple fluorite is the second one. Purple fluorite I'm recommending because it really helps to balance the mind, and it helps us when we're feeling mentally very confused and we're kind of spinning because maybe we have too much information, too much data, we don't know what to do with it, and we just like wind up confusing ourselves. Purple fluorite can help us to find some clarity there and some mental balance. So that could be another great stone to work with if you start to feel that way at all during Gemini season. Lastly, practices for this season. In our yoga practice, it's a great time to work on shoulders, arms, wrists, hands. All these parts of the body are associated with Gemini energy. So poses that open the shoulders, poses that help to build strength in the wrists are really great to do. It's a good time also, I think, for relaxing practices like restorative yoga or yoga nidra, because those help us come out of the mind and into the body, connecting with our emotions, our energy, to help us be like more receptive and present. So you may want to check those out if those aren't a normal part of your practice in the rest of the year. Moving on now to the general astrology of this season. There is a lot happening during Gemini season, which also is kind of no big surprise, just based on how Gemini energy goes. So kind of moving in chronological order here through the month. The first thing we're going to encounter is Saturn moving retrograde. Now this is something that happens every single year, so it's not like out of the ordinary or crazy or anything like that, but anytime a planet pauses its forward motion and begins to move retrograde or out of retrograde, the symbolism of that planet is heightened. And this happens on Sunday, May 23rd. So that was yesterday for me. And so when Saturn symbolism is heightened, things like responsibilities and duties and chores and, getting things done and achieving, all of those can be highlighted. And I don't know about you guys, but I totally had one of those days yesterday. I cleaned out all my closets and flipped all my summer and my winter stuff. I did laundry, I went grocery shopping, I cooked stuff, I cleaned. I mean, it was just like a total absolute Saturn day. So that is an influence that we may feel into the first part of this week here, the week of May 23rd. So nothing that we have to be particularly aware of. It's just an interesting thing that we might observe happening in our lives. The second thing this week is that Mercury is going to turn retrograde in the sign of Gemini, which I already mentioned a few minutes ago. Mercury will be retrograde from May 29th until June 22nd. So we've got a few weeks here that we're dealing with this. So just remember, it's maybe not the most promising time to start things that are completely new, but it is an awesome time to revisit anything that was put on hold, delayed, anything that fell through the cracks, anything that you kind of forgot about, but now you're like, oh shit, yeah, what happened to that? Great time to review and redo and revisit all those things. Additionally, because Mercury is retrograde in the sign of Gemini, and we talked about the parts of the body that Gemini is connected to, you might find that you are a little clumsier over these next couple weeks, particularly having less dexterity. You might be dropping a lot of things, or you might have some small, insignificant type of little injuries to your hands or your fingers. Already I've stabbed myself with something in the kitchen, and I cut my hand on something else, just total freak things that I was like, how did this happen? So again, it's nothing to be worried about. It's just something small that you may or may not experience through the Mercury retrograde here. After that, kind of in between that, because that Mercury goes retrograde at the end of this week, but we have a partial lunar eclipse in the sign of Sagittarius on Wednesday, May 26th, but it's kind of early in the morning. So really the energy is going to be strongest Tuesday night, May 25th, and Wednesday night, May 26th. Kind of those are the peak days, in my opinion, for this energy. And a lunar eclipse is just like a supercharged, heightened, energetic full moon. So this is a very potent time for releasing here in this early part of the week. It's interesting, this is going to happen at 5 degrees of Sagittarius, so just being aware, where does 5 degrees of Sagittarius fall in your personal chart? That can give you a little bit more information about this full moon lunar eclipse. But just generally speaking, you know, this eclipse is going to be square to the planet Jupiter. So I get the sense that there may be a heightened emotionality for some of us, particularly if we're experiencing emotions like anger, irritation, frustration, impatience. It might be that, you know, this angle to Jupiter kind of compounds that and expands that and makes it bigger. So I just want you to be aware of your own emotional state as you navigate this eclipse, because it's completely fine. If you experience those emotions, there is nothing wrong with that. I think we just want to make sure that we're not then taking those emotions out on other people, or letting the emotions kind of, see, I'm having word recall problems. That's a total Mercury retrograde issue. Just not letting the emotions like splay out all over the place, having a little bit more self-control with that. And then additionally, you know, because it's a lunar eclipse in Sagittarius and it's a south node eclipse, I think we want to be focusing kind of collectively on our beliefs and where we're very emotionally tied to those beliefs. And there might be some events that happen this week that kind of trigger us, that make us realize like, oh yes, I'm very emotionally tied to belief A or B or C. And it's great to be noticing those things, because this is a time to be letting go of certain beliefs that no longer serve us, that don't have a place in our lives now where we are at. They may be beliefs that were useful and protective to us for a long time. And it's just good to kind of evaluate with an open mind who you are as a person now, and whether or not there are beliefs that you may be ready to part with, even though it might be emotionally difficult, might be mentally difficult, but just allow yourself to be open to that potential experience. I also think too, with this lunar eclipse, watch out for the need to be right. That's just something that kind of keeps coming to me here, so I'm just going to say that out loud for whoever might need to hear it. And just learn to be accepting this week of whatever is. Even if all that comes out of this week is a whole bunch of mental confusion, that's okay. Just accept that as it is, and know that as time goes on, things will become clearer to you. You'll be more in tune with yourself, and the answers will come. So don't worry if they're not here this week. Moving on from that, so again, this is a big week. Saturn went retrograde on the 23rd, lunar eclipse in Sagittarius on May 26th, and then Mercury going retrograde on May 29th. So like, woo, this first full week of Gemini season is pretty intense. And then as we move along into June, we're gonna experience a solar eclipse on June 10th. Yes, June 10th at 19 degrees of Gemini. So where a lunar eclipse is a heightened full moon, a solar eclipse is a supercharged new moon. And it's really interesting. At this time, the new moon, we have the sun, moon, and Mercury all right together in the sign of Gemini. So there's definitely going to be an emphasis on like left brain, logical thinking, data analysis, you know, fact finding, fact gathering, thinking logically through things. You know, that energy is going to be very present for us at that new moon. But what's so interesting is the new moon, the solar eclipse, I should say, is going to be square to Neptune in Pisces. And Neptune in Pisces just has this very foggy quality to it. Like, that's where a lot of times we realize we're holding illusions, or we've been deceived, or we're not seeing things clearly. We feel confused. We don't know what we feel. So it's interesting to me that there's this dichotomy of energy between all these planets in Gemini, well, sun, moon, and Mercury anyway, being like facts and information and think it out and use your brain and what's logical and what makes sense, and then the Neptune just like totally clouding that. So if you feel very confused around the 10th of June at this new moon and you're like, I don't know what's going on, I don't know what I want, that's totally fine. I would encourage you to try to shut out the external stimuli, to get into a meditative space, to try to really connect with your innermost self And once you find that connection, you can set intentions from that place. Okay, because again, a solar eclipse is like a hugely potent time of intention setting. So, you know, quiet your mind, tune out the outside noise before you make any intentions. And if you are choosing to set intentions at that time, I would give you a little bit of guidance. Number one, intentions around communication are really favored in a Gemini solar eclipse. So, you know, how do you communicate things? Could you be communicating things in a better, more effective way? How are people receiving what you're communicating? You know, all of those are interesting things to consider. And when we set intentions of how do we want to share our ideas, our information, our messages, you might come up with some intentions around that topic. The second topic would be fluidity. So we've talked about some of these Gemini characteristics of being versatile, going with the flow, allowing for change. And so what are there areas in your life where you could stand to bring in a little bit more of that energy? And if so, you might want to set some intentions around that as well. So thinking about, you know, fluidity, thinking about communication. And again, keeping in mind too, that if you're just like totally spinning out near the new moon and that Neptune is really clouding your mind and your intuition, that's okay. Take a step back. You can always set intentions, you know, 1 or 2 or 3 days after that. It doesn't have to be exactly on that day. It's a very potently energetic time for a few days on either side of that. And lastly though, with that Neptune influence, I will say the other thing that could happen potentially with that is like these hunches or these flashes of insights or these sudden just hits, intuitive hits. So just be aware and pay attention. That may or may not show up for you, but if it does, I would say definitely take note of that. So this was a long video. Thank you guys for sticking with me, but that is all the big stuff that's going to be happening during Gemini season here. And as always, you can reach out to me via email or via Instagram if you have any questions. But happy Gemini season and hope you guys have a great one.